Hey guys, Happy New Year, Happy 2026. This is my first live for this year, and I wanted to talk about. I got a question, a brilliant question actually, yesterday about down leveling in big tech, which I wanted to talk about because I think that this is a topic that's not very widely discussed, and there's a lot of nuances and there's a lot of things to know about down leveling and how leveling and compensation structure actually works in big tech. So I got this question from somebody, and if I can share my screen, I have to figure out how to do it. Then I will share. No, not this one. There you go. I've actually prepared something that I want to share that I think can help you all making these kind of down leveling decisions. If you're on the live chat, feel free to drop any questions you have. I'm going to try and do it quick, but if you have any questions, feel free to share them and I'll try to address them as we go. So, the question I got yesterday from somebody on LinkedIn was I passed the interviews round, the final interviews round at a company for a data scientist role, but they're trying to down level me from senior to mid level. And I've heard that down leveling at big tech companies is actually common. I haven't seen much content or advice online about these situations, especially for data science. And I was wondering if you had any suggestions or how to approach this situation. So, first of all, great question, amazing question. Thank you so much for sending this over. And I agree, there is not a lot of content about these topics, and I think it's a shame actually because it's the kind of decisions that a lot of people have to make throughout their career at different points that they just get no guidance on unless they know somebody who understands these things and can give them the answers. So first thing I would say is different companies, like the same levels of different companies, mean different things. It's actually very common that I see people coming from a VP or CTO or even founder positions in different companies joining big tech, and they get leveled as director or in as staff or principal or distinguished engineering positions and so on and so forth. So the levels actually mean different things. That's one thing to keep in mind, but assuming that you already know that and assuming that you've already thought about that, so I would recommend in this situation asking yourself these three questions. Number one is, do they have a role for you at the lower level, right? That's really really important, because in this situation, for example, this person was getting down leveled from senior to mid level. Let's say, in Meta's terms, I would say, I would call it level 5 to level 4. This could be different things in different companies, but do they have a level 4 role for you available, like if they wanted to hire you? um, if they do, can they give you the compensation that you want at that level? That's a critical question, and that's something that a lot of people completely misunderstand about how compensation and how levels work in big tech. And the final question is, if they can, then what is the downside of down leveling? And there could be some downsides. There could also be some upsides, and I'll share some examples. So first of all, let's talk about, do they have a role? A lot of companies right now, because of the market situation and because of a lot of different reasons, they skew their hiring more towards the more senior levels. I personally think it's a mistake. I think that's a losing strategy in the long term. We can talk about that, but because of that, what happens is that, if they're looking for a senior data scientist and you're interviewing right now, and they've offered, they're leveling you at mid level rather than senior, then what it could potentially mean is that they don't actually have a role to offer you, right? Because you're not at the right level for them as of now. So that's a problem. But if they do have a role, then can they offer you the compensation? Now, this is what, and I'm just making up some numbers, but the concept here is what's really really important. In most big tech companies I've seen, this is what the levels and the compensation look like for different levels. So for every level, you have a compensation band. Okay, so it's not just like if you're level 3 then you get 120k or whatever. It's a band, it's a range. So you could be somewhere between, let's say, 100k to 150k. Now where the company actually wants you to be is really bang on in the middle in most cases, and it's, it's distributed in a way that most people actually fall in the middle. But the fact that it's a range gives them some flexibility, right? Because some people can actually push them towards the top of the band and actually give them a higher compensation that to some extent would overlap with the next level, without actually promoting them to the next level. Okay, so this is crucial, right? They can, let's say that the target compensation you're aiming for is 140, then in theory they can offer you the same compensation at level 4 and level 3, right? And at level 4 you would be somewhere at the bottom of the band, because where they want you to be is somewhere more in the middle. At level 3 you might get pushed to the top of the band. They may not be able to stretch it too much, so at some point you have to get promoted if you want your compensation to keep increasing. But in theory they can, in a lot of cases, there is, because there is this overlap, they may be able to offer you the compensation you want at the different levels, right? And when you get promoted, so let's say you get promoted, now you're here, and then again there is overlap between this and the next level. So that's something that you really really have to understand about big tech compensation. And this is what I've seen in all big tech companies I've worked in, and also in others that I hadn't. I think this is a fairly standard practice. So going back to the questions, can they offer you the role at the lower level? Sometimes the answer is yes. They would be willing to offer you a role, not at level 5, at level 4. Can they give you the compensation you're aiming for? Sometimes the answer is still yes. They may be able to offer you a compensation package that falls within the range that you want, because of this overlap. Okay, and if they can offer you, now I'm not saying the overlap is 100%. There are differences. For example, the bonuses that you get at level 3, level 4, level 5 are going to be different, right? In many companies you get bonuses, and the bonuses are, the percentage of bonus is dependent on your level. The expectations are different. uh your ability to do certain types of things or projects or whatever are going to be different. So there is, the level is important. I'm not saying it's not important. Also RSU refreshers, if RSUs, if stocks are part of your, and equity is part of your compensation, then again these refreshers, you get different amounts at the different levels. So I'm not saying this is not important, right? All I'm saying is you might still be able to come in at the lower level. So now, if they can bring you in, then what is the downside of down leveling? And I think that the downside is, first of all, in the longer term, if you don't just look at what is my next role, but you actually look at your career journey and you think, okay, what does my career look like? Maybe getting down level doesn't reflect very well in your CV or in your journey. Maybe that's not the kind of step that you want to take. um, there can be other downsides. For example, you might get stuck at the lower level, and maybe for now it's fine because you still get the compensation that you want, but you're much more limited because the top of the band here is much lower than the top of the band here. So obviously there's not much for you, much room for you to grow, and so on and so forth. I will say that lower levels come with lower expectations, right? So it's a lot easier to meet and even exceed the expectations at the lower level than it is at the higher levels. And why this is important, because the purpose of interviewing is to predict whether somebody will be successful at a certain role at a certain level. Okay, so that's the purpose of interviewing. When you're getting interviewed to a company, let's say you're getting interviewed to Amazon at level 6, what the interviewers try to do is they're going to try and predict, are you going to be successful as a data scientist level 6 at Amazon in that role? That's what they're trying to do. Now, maybe these interviewers are very calibrated and they say, we don't think you're going to be successful as level 6, we think you might be successful at level 5. because the expectations for level 5 are lower. And what sometimes happens is if they can offer you the same compensation at two different levels, you might get pushed down a level, but then you might get promoted within 6 to 12 months. That used to be a very common practice. So they bring you, if there is doubt, they bring you at a lower level. The advantage of that is onboarding is going to be easier for you. It's going to be easier for you to succeed in your role. They're setting you up for success in the long term, and you get the option to get promoted. This used to be a very common practice. I have a friend who came in as a software engineer at Meta. He was leveled at, previously had several years of experience. Ideally, he would have been leveled at level 4, but because of his performance in interviews or whatever, they decided that they're not 100% sure he's going to be successful. They offered him to come in at level 3. He came in at level 3, got promoted to level 4 within 6 months, and then got promoted again, within 12 months from then, or 18 months from then. So actually within 2 years he got to level 5, um, which was actually not very bad. And at level 3 he was actually at the very top of the band. So the compensation was, he was very happy with the compensation that he was offered. So there are upsides to getting down leveled. The downside is, look, the market is much more stagnant right now. Some of these companies are tightening their belts. Because of that, promotions are not as easy as they were before. And there is a risk that you could come in at a lower level and then get stuck in that level for a longer time. Sorry. And that may or may not be bad for your career. That's your choice. Sometimes, depending on your career journey, coming into a big tech company for 1 or 2 or 3 years, even if you're coming in at a lower level initially, might be a good stepping stone to a much more exciting career journey, right? So you might sacrifice a little bit in the short term, but then you're setting yourself up on a great trajectory because you've got a good brand behind you. You've got a big company, you have the experience, you know how to operate in these environments, you work on really exciting projects, very cool tech. So like there's a lot of upsides that can come with that you can say, look, like I'm willing to sacrifice a little bit right now for what I could get in the future. I wouldn't necessarily take a pay cut. I don't think that's a very good idea in most cases. In most cases, not always, but I think you should insist on getting the payment that you want. But I think that the leveling is a little bit more flexible if it helps you achieve your career goals in the long term. So that's what I wanted to clarify. And yeah, uh, I think that's really everything I wanted to say. I don't know if it resonates with you or if that's helpful. If you have any other questions on that, if you want to understand more about that, or if you still have questions, then please do let me know in the comments. I'll do my best to respond as quickly as possible. Message me on LinkedIn. Subscribe to the channel if you want to support that and if you found it helpful. And yeah, thank you so much for being with me today. Really appreciate it. Thanks.